ever before we went to the Masters. Angela, you know what it was called? The Waffle House. It was
Oh,
unbelievable.
I actually love the Waffle House
I do
because we
too.
don't have any up here. So it's just kind of like a fun thing that we get to do whenever we're like on vacation or something. Like, let's go to the Waffle House.
How do you not have a Waffle House up there? That's like criminal.
I know. It's really great.
Yeah.
But
Barry's
nothing
mom.
nothing tops our dinner with your in-laws.
That I was going to talk about that. Um,
Uh-oh. I
well,
feel like there's a story here.
there is a story, and I'll save it for the introduction. How's that?
Good,
Okay.
Yeah,
good.
that's awesome.
Hmm.
Cool, cool, cool.
All right. Uh,
So pumped.
yeah, me too. Fired up.
Awesome. Well, what do you think? Should we get started?
Yeah, I have
I
10 on the dot.
Let's do it. Let's do it. Well, you guys are all in for a treat today. One of my favorite people in the entire world, not just dentistry, and I mean that sincerely. I love this guy. I actually could do about a half hour introduction on you and go through all the stories and why and all of this stuff. But I'll give you kind of the short version of it. As I was going down to Pankey and learning from doctor whose name was Dr. Erwin Becker, he had a son. And I was like, this guy is great, you know? And so we got to know each other, hang out. Our relationship evolved when he became an ACT client and just crushed it. And practicing in Atlanta, he was never afraid to just say, okay, I'm going to do it. And he did it. And it was awesome. And like every relationship in coaching, I started as the coach and then it quickly became the student. And so Daren taught me a lot more than I probably ever taught him. Um, but what's really cool about this guy is he's an amazing human being and an incredible clinician. And if you ever get a chance, you have to have dinner with him because that is truly like the best thing you possibly do. It's not a meal. It's an experience that keeps going on and on and on. So the story around dinner is I got selected to speak at Hinman, and so he's like, "I'm going to be your host." I'm like, "How did you work that?" And so my in-laws had never. I think they'd see me speak once a little bit. I was like, "Okay, if you guys want to come, let's go to Atlanta." So I brought my mother-in-law and my father-in-law, who are just the sweetest people on the planet, and my wife. And they watched speak. And then I said, Darren, you got to take us out to dinner. And so he takes us out to dinner. We go to this like apartment complex and it's dark and we go into the back. I'm like, where are we going? Are we going to get whacked back here? Like it was scary. And then we go down into this basement, into this stairwell. And I'm like, dude, where are we going? This doesn't even look like a restaurant. And then we walk into this place, and I think they opened this curtain. It looked like a secret restaurant. It was packed. It was one of the best dining experiences of my entire life. I can't even name the restaurant. The dinner itself was like 4 hours, and my mother-in-law and I mean, they still all talk about it as one of the greatest experiences ever. I don't even know what we ate, but I remember how much we laughed, and that was the best. And on top of that, there's so many experiences. I'm grateful for you. And probably one of the most notable is that when the world shut down, you were one of the first people I called. I was texting you back and forth in my panic attack that I was having. I had a full out panic attack. And so Daren was on my quick dial, like, what do we do? I don't know. What should we do? I don't,
No, you said, dude, what are we gonna do? I don't know what we're gonna do, but we got to do something. That was
you got to
something
do
like that.
something. Yeah. And I said, you got to, hey, can you help me out? Can you just show up? And you did. And I thought it was going to be for 1 day or 2 days. I think it was going to be a three. Angela, you could correct us.
3 days. We ended up 3 days we were gonna do.
It was a 3 day.
Yeah, it was
Tele-
originally going to be two, and then we added a third, and then we added 14 more weeks.
well, I thought COVID was going to be over in like 3 weeks. And we didn't know, but and you were there all the time. So I'm just incredibly grateful for you, brother. And I feel blessed that you're part of this community and you keep showing up for us. So please meet and enjoy my dear friend, Dr. Daren Becker.
Thank you, Kirk. That was very kind. I'm gonna share the love and tell you that what you did, what you did during COVID, saved my life, saved a lot of people's lives, and I don't say that lightly. I wouldn't have survived if I didn't have that something to do. I mean, really. So thank you so much. And the doors that it opened and the people that we met. I'm looking on the screen and I'm seeing my friend Layla. Oh, hi. And and of course all the ACT people and your whole team and just uh couldn't it was the worst time and the best time. So thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Um so we're going to get started. Thanks for the invitation. I know you've got stuff to do, but I'll see you later. We're going to get started. I want to share with everybody first before we go into it. As we're going, if you guys have questions or comments, um, go ahead and interrupt me. I'm totally fine with that. Actually, Angela, I did forgot to ask you this. Can they like unmute to talk or whatever?
Yeah, they can unmute to talk. They
Okay.
can also type something in the chat if they don't want to do that. Yep.
Okay. It's hard for me to read the chat as I'm going. I know some people can do that masterfully. I'm not good at that. So either interrupt me or Angela, if you see something in the chat, you are welcome to interrupt me and just let me know.
Will do.
So let's get started. Uh, Okay. Can you hear me now? Can you see me
Yep,
now?
you're good.
Okay, good. So our topic today is going to be digital workflow in the restorative dental practice. Here's my that's my personal email. I'm really not an Instagram guy, but I was told I'm supposed to put that on there. So it's I don't know, whatever. I don't post a lot of stuff. I think we have an office Instagram page, but that's not I don't do that. Somebody else does that. But my email, if you're going to email me anything, questions, comments, whatever, please go ahead. But in the subject, put something about like best practices or BPA or Act Dental or something, because otherwise, if I don't recognize who you are, it will get deleted in the hundreds of emails I get every day. But if you want to reply, and if I don't reply in a couple days, just shoot it again. So, um, and you know, most of the time when I speak to groups now, and I'll say not that long ago, 3 years ago, if I polled the group and I said, how many of you all are using an intraoral scanner? Maybe half, a few less than half, a few more than half. And I can tell you last week I was teaching down at Pankey, and we said, how many of you are routinely intraoral scanning? And the whole room raised their hand. There wasn't anybody who didn't. So beyond scanning, we need to know where we're going from there. What am I going to do with that scan? What's my system for using my scanner in my office? So we're going to talk about developing a system for scanning every patient in your practice. We're going to learn several techniques for scanning the occlusion. We'll talk about that. We're going to talk about how to mount, and I'll use mount in quotes, digital scans on a digital articulator using Dr. Bonwell's articulation principles. And now it's happening again. Angela, oh, there it goes. We're going to talk about occlusal splint design and 3D printing, talk about how to quickly assess if a case can be equilibrated. So looking at the occlusion in the digital world is a whole different kind of a thing. Um, and we'll talk about that. How to add a digital mount to print a model that can be snapped onto an articulator if you're trying to do something to go analog. We'll show you that, and that's kind of a game changer in our world. Um, I don't know why that keeps happening. There we go. And I kind of took this out of my presentations for a while because it was the same people all the time, and now it's all new people. So just so you know something a little bit about me, I am married. My wife and I have been married 23 years. We do have two kids. Allie's 20, Addison's 16. And as Kirk was just saying, in a blink of an eye, it goes by. They were, 5 and 8 a week ago, and now they're 20 and 16. And there's, that's cute little baby, and now she's taller than I am, the little one. It's unreal, and it just you blink and it's gone. That's my whole family, my folks, my sisters, my nieces, and they're getting a little older here, and all of a sudden they're people. So Allie's in the front. She's my college kid. She's at Rollins College in Orlando, near Orlando, Florida. And Addison's in the back. She's a sophomore, just well, finishing her sophomore year of high school here in Atlanta. She is taller than me at this point, and Allie's the same height that she was when she was, I think, in sixth grade, which is like, I think 5'2". Anyway, um, moving on. I personally, I am passionate about fly fishing and outdoor photography. I just got back from a trip. That's a redfish that I caught on a fly rod. So we do a lot of saltwater fly fishing. Since moving here to Atlanta from Florida, I now learned to freshwater fly fish. So I catch trout and all that kind of thing. We've been all over the country doing that. And if you want me to come speak at your study club, I'm happy to, as long as there's fishing there. I enjoy golf. Calling me a golfer is an insult to golfers, but I really love like watching golf. So here's Kirk and I. I got to take Kirk to the Masters one year, and it was a highlight for I think both of us, and so that was a big memory for us. I'm a rabid Florida Gators fan. Those of you who don't live in the Southeast probably don't give a crap, but those of us in the Southeast, college sports, college football is everything. Our lives revolve around it, and we're now a basketball school that wins basketball championships. So we like to talk about that. Our national championship basketball team this year. So happens that our baseball team is in the finals. Our golf program, both boys and girls, are doing really well. Softball, I think we're third in the country. Women's lacrosse, we're in the final four, if I'm correct. Anyway, the whole school's doing great, and go Gators. But I'm in private practice. I'm a regular private practice general dentist. I have a solo practice that's now growing. I have an associate now. She's in with me a little over a year and a half, and we are a fee for service practice. I don't participate in any plans or group, what are those things? We Patients come, they pay us a fair fee, and then we do their appropriate care. Um, I don't get, well, I don't get anything from anybody. So I'm not a paid consultant. I don't get subsidized. Nobody sends me free crap. I am open to it and willing to have that conversation. So if anyone's out there listening, love to have that conversation. Sure. I am an unpaid KOL for a lot of different things. iTero and ExoCAD specifically, Straumann implants and um, Brasseler. Again, don't get anything free. They don't pay me. They just ask me my opinion. I was a KOL and an advisor for a printer company called Nexa 3D. It's an Israeli company that made what in my opinion, is the best 3D printer for dentistry that was ever been made, and they just went out of business. I don't know if it's because of the war or what, but anyway, so don't go buy one of those. I am on the visiting faculty at the Pankey Institute, and I'm an adjunct clinical faculty at the College of Dentistry in Augusta, Georgia, at Augusta University. And then more recently, I am now on the board of directors at the Pankey Institute. So I will say that anything I say about the Pankey Institute is biased. I am 100% biased. I love that place. It has changed my life and so many others. And so doesn't mean it's not accurate and honest, but I will tell you that I am on the board of directors, so I'm always going to say something nice about Pankey. And then my images are all mine. If they're not mine, I will tell you they are not mine. And I don't do any other photoshopping besides just cropping. So there you go. So let's talk about digital dentistry for a second. It's routine. It's every day in my practice. We don't really do anything that's analog. We don't really take impressions anymore. We scan everything. Everything is digitally designed. We're printing models and surgical guides and occlusal splints and trial smiles and provisionals. Pretty much everything's getting printed. pardon me, either here or at the lab. So, once again, it can be used for diagnostics and archives. Archives is huge because we have, limited space in our practices. Most of us do. And if you're somebody like me, for years and years and years, you had just thousands of models on patients that you had to store and you run out of space. Well, in digital world, I can archive every scan I've ever made of a patient. It doesn't take up any room at all, and it's available forever. So it's really kind of cool. We can design and treatment plan in the digital world, which we do routinely, and we're going to look at that. And we can design and fabricate definitive restorations. And that is our mode of operation here. And I'll side note, I will suggest this as something to consider. If you are doing analog impressions, elastomeric impressions for your final restorations, you should definitely check with your lab and find out how they're designing and creating those restorations for you. What I mean by that is most of the time today, modern labs are doing everything digital. So if you send the lab an impression, the first thing they do is they pour it up in stone and then they scan that stone. So, and then they're going to design the restorations digitally on their computer and they're going to have them printed or milled. And so what you're starting with is like a copy of a copy, and you throw in opportunity for error and dimensional changes. So if your lab is doing digital design and fabrication, you should consider doing digital acquisition of the data, meaning digital scanning of those preps. And the opposite's true. If you have a lab that is a hands-on analog lab that they're hand waxing and pressing or hand waxing and casting, uh, you know, those those people are going to take digital scans and print or mill models. Every time you switch between one and the other, you throw in a risk of error. So either if the lab's doing digital, you should send them scans, and if the lab's doing analog, you should send them impressions. That would be my best advice. Dr. Pete Dawson said this like I think this is almost 20 years ago. Digital dentistry, in the absence of sound occlusal, aesthetic, and restorative principles, will only allow a dentist to screw up mouths even faster. And I love that because it shows how ahead of how ahead of the curve he was, in the sense that he was talking about digital dentistry before we even knew what it was. And he's such a principled guy. I'll do a shout out to him and say thank you for everything you did for me, Dr. Dawson. Rest in peace. And just so happens in this picture is John Cranham, sort of my partner in crime right now at Pankey, putting together our digital curriculum there. And love to him as well. He's in Amsterdam right now lecturing. Okay, so let's look at a case. So one of the things that we can do with digital, and we're going to talk specifically about scanning, is the pre-op scan. So this is how a patient comes in, and he's looking like this, and we can go ahead and, Angela, I don't know why every time I blink it loses its connection for my keyboard, and I have to keep hitting a button. But so we can use it for diagnosis. So we're going to look at the scan, and we can look for things like wear, we can look at attrition, we can look at failing restorations, crowding, perio, all on a scan. We can see these things. Can't see root resorption on a scan, but this is where x-rays come in, and I just throw it in to say, we get in the digital world, we can't forget our principles. Keep doing your diagnosis. Do we see, by the way, this is digital dentistry because it's digital x-rays. Do we see these two root resorptive lesions on our PA? Maybe we do, maybe we don't. It's pretty subtle. But on a cone beam CT, we can sure see something going on there. And in that slice, we can see that. So, don't forget in your diagnosis, be complete, be thorough, make sure you're doing imaging and looking at all that. So in the analog world, we would make an impression. When you have multiple units, let's say multiple preps, sometimes that's hard. You go around and you're injecting your light body on the margins, and You do one tooth, you do the third, second tooth, the third tooth. You get to the fourth tooth, all of a sudden there's a little bleeder. And what do? We do the same thing. We go ahead and we keep going, and we hope we get it. And sometimes you pull that impression, and there's a defect in the impression because it's got blood on it. Excuse me. In the digital world, you go around and you start scanning, and if there's a spot that doesn't look good, you stop, you clean it up, you put some hemodent, whatever you do, you dry it off, and you go right back to scanning. If you end up with your scan and there's something you don't like, you can go trim it away and rescan it. It's brilliant technology for that, and I think it really can make a make a difference. You may have a variation in accuracy if you're not using a custom tray in the analog world. You have different thicknesses of material. You're going to have distortion. These materials shrink and expand, and you have to have the right timing, and you have to disinfect it, and all these things that you have to do with it that can affect the accuracy of it. There is a potential for distortion, as we just said, contamination. And the biggest one is no facial references. You know, when your lab is looking at models, even on an articulator, and they're designing restorations or designing a wax up, they don't have the patient's face in there. And that's a game changer for us. And no ability to see bone. So with data stacking, we can, in the digital world, we can put the photo, we can put the scan of the models, and we can put the CBCT even on that and look at everything all in one thing. So we use iTero. I said I'm a KOL for iTero. We just got the new Lumina scanner. It is unbelievable. Really super sharp images. From a patient education standpoint, I think there's nothing better than using a scanner. But we need to have a system for using these tools. These are just tools. This is simply a tool. And so in our office, our system is quite simple. Every new patient gets a scan, period. Whether they're coming in as a new patient through hygiene, whether they're coming in as a new patient with me for a comprehensive exam, pardon me, we do an initial scan on everybody. It's the starting point. Again, patient education, diagnosing, treatment planning, and then later as we start moving to anything that we're going to be doing, I've already got them. I've already got their scans in the system, and I can do whatever I need to do. So that piece of it's automatic. When we move into making stuff, if you want to say that, so we're going to do whitening trays, or the patient needs a new Essex retainer, or whatever we're going to be making, typically making things for, we've already got the scan. I can print the model, it's there. And then from a standpoint of follow-up, our kind of rule is every year to year and a half, we're taking a new scan in hygiene as part of our regular recare. The same way we update periodontal probing, the same way we update x-rays on some sort of a program for that, we are going to do a scan. And, this is the most amazing thing. They don't all, by the way, all scanners are great. There are pluses and minuses to each one. They've all come so far that there's not one that's the better one and the worst one and whatever. They're all really, really good at what they do. This happens to be an iTero specific thing. They call it time lapse. I think time lapse is what they call it. But if you watch the thing on the left, what you're going to see, it's going to flash between 2021 and 2025 scans, and you can literally see the gum receding. And the patient says, "No, my gum's always been like that." And you say, "Well, let's look at that." And I don't even have to say anything. You just wheel the thing in front of them and you put that on there. And I'll do the one on the right, same thing. And it's like, man, you might be concerned about that. That's actually a change in less than 4 years, you are having pretty significant change. And it's the same thing with gum recession like that as it is with wear on teeth, migration or shifting of teeth, crowding of teeth. We can show them those changes that we know when we tell a patient, they go, "No, it's always been like that." Really? I don't think so. And here they can see it. And it's really powerful. And, actually the patients get on and they start moving their models on the screen, because everyone knows how to use a screen now. They know how to just put their finger on it. It's touch screen, and they can see that. So from a, again, patient education standpoint, it's amazing. But if I don't have that initial scan and the follow-ups, I can't do this. So um, that's a huge thing for us. So that's part of our system. And then, of course, we're scanning our restorative cases. Obviously, we scan the preps, we scan the provisionals on a complex case, and that's a way to communicate with the lab. And so that's all part of our system for using our scanner in our office. So this is just an example of an iTero scan. And for those of you who don't, um, that's not going to work. Never mind. I was going to show you the scan for real live, but that's okay. Wait a minute. Okay, good. We do digital photos still. It's really good way to record what we've got and to send to the lab the information. One of the things that the scanners don't do real well yet is motion. So here we see pictures of the patient like guiding or you're moving into a lateral excursive movement and showing the lab so they can see that in a photo. You could make a video with your camera. There are products like ModJaw that do jaw tracking, and you can use that. But most of the scanners don't have that yet. I think it will become a part of it soon. This is the typical scene at a modern day dental laboratory. So this is at CMR Dental Lab in Idaho Falls, Idaho, where they've been doing my restorations for over 20 years now. Matt Roberts is was the owner and main guy. He's sold the lab to his son, Mike Roberts, and I just don't have a fun picture of Mike sitting at the computer. But what you notice is not there is there's no stone, there's no articulator on the desk, there's no wax. It looks like an Apple store in their office, and this is how they work. And it's incredible to see that sort of workflow, and what we get from that is these amazing, you call it a wax up or digital design or digital smile design that they can do on the computer. It's efficient, it's effective, and it's just amazing. So this is kind of the next step in what we're doing. And like I said, they can do what's called data stacking, where they can put the photograph with the 3D scan of the teeth from the scanner, and even add the CBCT if they really wanted to, and do all of the design work. And so this is what's called multi-point alignment. So you click on certain points on the photograph, and then you click on those same points on the model, and the thing knows how to like mush them all together. And so the picture on the far right is that model in the face with the photo, and they can see things like the smile display, and you can do it on multiple photos. So you could, make sure that your smile matches where the lips are and where the eye level is and the horizon and all of these things that are so important. We try to find ways to send that information to the lab. And in the digital world, it just makes it so much easier. Um, so now we have a design and we can put that right in the face. Now, what's interesting is this picture is probably, I can't see the year on it, but it's probably a couple of years old. And the quote unquote wax up sort of looks like wax. And today they look like teeth. The software has gotten so much better. Now they just look like teeth. And we can see what you could never see with a wax up is, well, what did we change? Because you can toggle or slide the amount of translucency on this stuff, so you can turn the translucency down on your design, and you could see where the underlying teeth are. And we see exactly how much we're adding. That picture in the bottom right corner is using what's called the slice tool, where we can look at, how thick is the old restoration to the new restoration. And I can't see the number there, but it's, you can see that, exactly what you're adding. You know how much you have to prep too, so that you're not over prepping or under prepping. Because as you can see in this particular case, the patient's right side would need a little bit more preparation. And the patient's left side won't need that much because we're adding that much length. So kind of neat. And so we have the digital wax up. We see all of that, and we can then send that across email. The lab sends that STL file to me, and then I can print that model in my lab. And from that, I can um, take the model. I can design a matrix. We use Siltech, but you could use any silicone material, and you can fill that with like a bisacryl temporary material and put it right over the teeth and do a mock-up in 2 minutes. And just to get a sense of what it is we're trying to do in the mouth. You can also print your temporaries. So this is the printer I have that I'd mentioned in the beginning. Nexa 3D is the company. Sadly, they just went out of business or are going out of business. And this was their Zip, XIP Zip, which is just a unbelievable printer. And I'm sad that they're gone. Obviously, there's other print companies. Sprint Ray is probably the most common and popular one right now in the dental world. And there'll be others, and they come and go. So we're not going to talk about printers too much, other than to say they work and they're great. And this this funny picture on the right, that was in Chicago the year that they brought this printer out. That was the very first one, and I was fortunate enough to be involved with some of the design features of this thing, and so I couldn't wait to see this. This was my first time seeing it. There's another picture that they have of me hugging the machine, which is really sad, but I was that excited about it. And one of the things that's really important to know, if you're thinking about moving in this direction and getting a printer, as you can see, and the printer I'm working on in the picture on the left is also a company that's gone out of business. That's Evodent. But all these machines are tall. They're tall, and a lot of them open up. These two open in the front, but a lot of them, the top lifts up. And generally speaking, our labs have a waist height countertop and then upper cabinets, and the space between the countertop and the cabinet is too short. So for many people, getting a 3D printer literally means redoing part of your office or your lab or finding somewhere to put this thing if you don't have just the physical room you need for it. And they all require post-processing, which is a separate piece of equipment. So here you see the printer and the post-processing wash and cure system, also kind of a large piece of equipment. Some of them you'll have three things. You'll have the printer, the wash station, and the cure station, two separate things. So just know that the footprint of these things are kind of big. And then one of the other pieces of information that they forget to tell you when you're looking at these printers is, okay, well, the printer can print these models with very high resolution, 50 microns in, 8 minutes or 12 minutes or 18 minutes or whatever the thing is, and everybody brags about that. But then it has to go through a wash system for 5 minutes, and then it has to go into a light box for post-processing for 15 minutes or however long that is. So the printer companies tell you how fast it'll print, but they forget to tell you about what's the post-processing. And I will tell you that post-processing is different for each material. So from a model resin to a splint resin to a guide resin, provisional resin, whatever you're using is going to have its own specific curing times for post-processing, along with whatever kind of light you're using. This is a high power multi-wavelength light that's really is supposedly a faster cure. And then my Nexa wash and cure light system is an LED light system, and it takes a much longer time to cure. But sometimes they say slow curing is a little better if you have the time. So anyway, just know that from a timing standpoint, that's the issue. And we get these models that are unbelievable. They can be very accurate, and they don't have to have the little layer lines that we used to see when you print these in higher resolution. And we're printing everything in higher resolution now. And you can use them like any other model you would use. Again, you can make a matrix. This is this tech. I forget what this material is, but and we do a bilaminate matrix. So we make a matrix in a traditional way, and then we actually reline it with a wash material to pick up all that detail. And when we have that matrix system, and I like to trim out the interproximals, well, and taking it to a crazy level, you can do what are called staged models, where if you're working sequentially on a patient, you can have a matrix that has, let's say, your front 6 teeth or 8 teeth that are waxed up with your posterior teeth unchanged, like in the original preoperative form, and the matrix fits really well. And then when you go to do the other, the posterior, maybe you're going to do one side just for simplifying or for patients, time and cost to let them spread things out. We can have a matrix that fits, let's say, the front teeth that have been prepped and provisionalized, and one side that's still pre-op and one side that's the new design, or however you want to mix it up. And it's really kind of a cool way to do it. Um, but we're going to take that matrix. We're going to fill it with a bisacryl, like I said. We're going to fit that over somebody's teeth. And in 2 or 3 minutes, we have a mock-up on the teeth. And particularly if we're adding, it's an additive case where we're changing vertical. It's just such a sweet way to do it. That then becomes a prep guide. So we prep right through our mock-up and we know exactly what our reduction should be. And it really is a cool way to do things. So here's the mock-up, or as Christian Coachman calls it, the motivational mock-up or trial smile. And so no prep on these teeth. We've just simply got the wax up or the digital design. We made that matrix. We filled it with a bisacryl, put it on the teeth, and he can look at it. And he can say, oh, that's exactly what I wanted, or oh, that's not what I thought this was going to look like. And you can get a lot of feedback and you can play with those, and that can become a really helpful tool in your planning and patient education on their case, whether they aren't sure what they want to do. I'll use an example of patient wants 6 veneers and we wax up 10 and we show them the mock-up of 10 on their smile, and they look at that and they love it and it looks great. And then we pop off the bicuspids. So it's back to the original 6 that they wanted. They can see where the buccal corridor is deficient and they get to make an educated decision. Nope, I want to stick with the 6 and I understand that the buccal corridor is going to be, kind of deficient. Or no, I don't like that. I want to do more teeth and I want this built out so that it looks a certain way. So the ability for them to preview that is huge. We then prep the teeth and then we use that same design to make provisionals. And so these are the temporary restorations on his preps, and he gets to wear those. We can test out phonetics, we can test out the aesthetics, all the function, we can make adjustments to that. And once the patient and we have approved those provisionals, we do a new scan of the provisionals, and the provisionals then become a prototype, and that prototype is going to guide the lab in making the final restorations. And what the lab actually can do is they can take those approved provisionals and sort of copy them off of the provisional scan and paste them right onto the prep scan. So here's the prep scan, and what we get back is final restorations. In these happen to be Emax, lithium disilicate, could be zirconia, could be whatever your material choices, that are just literally duplicates of those approved provisionals. There's no guesswork. There's no like, well, I didn't think they would look like that, because they've already gone through that in the provisional. So you get to do the case a few times, once in the design phase, once in the prototype phase, once in, and I should say, once in the design phase, once in the trial smile phase, mock-up, once in the provisional phase or prototype phase, and then the final is in the porcelain. So really a cool way to do things. And he was super happy, and that just is so predictable. You go from there to there. And I love predictable. Predictable is fun. So let's move on and look at using a digital articulator, because that's where, oh yeah, Angela, go ahead.
Before you move on, we do have a question in the chat about kind of who's doing what. So the question says, do you have auxiliary team members who support these systems, or is it all you? How much commitment you versus the team?
And the answer is it is up to you. So and your team. So in my office, I will tell you that what we started doing when we started doing this, and I will tell you, we have been digitally scanning every restoration we've done since the first iTero came out, and I don't remember what year that is, I'm going to say it was like 2007 or 8, something like that. I forget exactly when it was. I might be wrong on the year, but so we've been doing this a long time, and what we did was we simply the scanner just replaced the impression material. So we scanned the case and it got sent to the lab, and everything was done at the lab. Um, we didn't have a printer. We weren't designing anything. I didn't have any software, and so that was the beginning. And you can still do that. You have a scanner, scan your case, you send it to the lab, they do everything, and you get stuff back. Um, we then moved into printing. And so we got the printer. And by the way, so who scans? Everyone. Everyone's trained to scan. It's that important. Hygienists scan during hygiene recare. Assistants scan when we're, doing any kind of restorative work, or if we need, anything that, whitening tray, whatever it is, the assistants do that. I will scan, so I'm proficient with it. It's not one of those things like I probably couldn't take a really great impression with alginate anymore because I haven't done it in 100 years. But so we all can scan. The most important thing, the printer, the one assistant, my associate, and myself are proficient at using the printer, and there's a couple reasons for that. One is no one else wants to, and that's fine. I'm not going to force the issue on anybody. Um, I think the more people who can use it, the better. Um, but really, only one person can kind of do it at a time anyway. We have one printer. And so it's sort of the sweet spot for us, but you could do it any way you want. We started using the printer, and the way we were using the printer was we scanned people, we printed models if we needed to make something like a whitening tray or an Essex retainer.
Thank you. You're
Um,
welcome. Thank you. Yeah. Thank
we 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 print models when the lab does a digital design like you just saw. So instead of having them ship me, they print it and ship it to me, we just got emailed the models, and then we would print them, and we could make our matrices. You can have the lab make the matrices for you. You don't have to make them. Um, and now we have software. So we're going to get to software in a minute, but what your lab is using is what's called lab design software, and it's either one of 2 or 3 products right now. 3Shape Lab Design or ExoCAD design softwares are the big players. There's a couple others out there, but most commercial or you know uh, uh, dedicated labs are using one of those 2 softwares for the most part. And we decided to get into that game for a couple of reasons. One, so we would have some control over things, and it helps us communicate better with the lab. Uh, we we can do design work. We're designing splints. We'll get to all that. So who's doing that? Myself and my associate for the most part. I would say it's kind of the same thing. Who's doing wax up in your in your office if you actually are doing any design work in your office? Probably the dentist is doing it. Maybe you have an assistant, or if you have a lab assistant that's doing that, but you get to choose that. I hope that answers that question.
And one more, what is
Yeah.
your opinion on scan path for wand scanners? For example, what protocol you teach your assistants, and is that iTero specific?
Yes. So scan pattern, that's an excellent question. Each scanner has its own preferred scan pathway, like how you capture the data. The software is specifically written to do it in a certain way. And I will tell you, it's so specific that it changed for us. I've been using iTero for 100 years, and it changed for us when we got the new iTero Lumina. It's a totally different scan pattern. And there's a little bit of a learning curve. It's not a big deal. But yeah, you need to follow your scan pattern, and I do what's recommended by the manufacturer. So if you have 3Shape Trio scanners, you're going to do it a certain way. If you have a Medit scanner, you're going to do it a certain way. If you have a Prime scan, you're going to do it a certain way. And iTero does it their way. And like I said, it just changed. So, um, and a lot of them have a thing where when you start using it, it'll coach you through it, like right on the screen. It'll tell you now scan the buccal, now scan the whatever, so you know which way to go. But once you do it 3 times, you'll have it figured out. but it's a great question. And it does affect accuracy. Oh, you know what else affects accuracy? Well, we'll get to that. Never mind. Everything. So anyway, there's the pre-op and the finals. Did we skip backwards somehow? We might have. We did. Sorry. All right. So how did we get that far back? That's weird. Sorry about that, gang. Wait, is it going backwards?
Yeah, I was gonna say I think we went
Sorry.
wrong direction.
Hold, please. Get to see behind the scenes. That was really weird. Okay. Can you still see me?
We can see you, but you're not sharing at the moment.
I'm not sharing at the moment. Well, that's not good. Let's go back to sharing. Sorry, gang. Share. Can you see me now?
Yep.
Okay. So now I've got like a weird double screen. What did I do? All right, but it looks good on your end?
Yes, it says mounting the upper scan.
Okay. So how do we mount upper models? Well, we mount them with an ear bow or a face bow, and that is tradition. There is the Kois Dental Facial Analyzer, which is what I think a lot of people are using today. It's what we're teaching at the Pankey Institute. John Kois came up with this thing because of the studies from Bonwell that found that when they took thousands of people and skulls and whatever, they found that the distance from the hinge axis in the condyle to this incisal edge of the upper central was about 100 millimeters, and within just a few millimeters difference, unless you had some really statistical outliers. And they found that that little bit of difference really did not make a clinical difference. We just don't see a difference with it. And so, as much as um, you know, I'll say the classic prosthodontic literature talks about, face bows, and back then they were actually determining the actual hinge axis and making tattoos on people's skin with markers and really dialing it in. And then we got to the ear bow. The ear bow is it's an arbitrary face bow based on this same principle. And John figured out how to use the dental facial analyzer, which is the exact same thing, but you don't need to put anything in the patient's ears to get the same result. And we can do the same thing in the digital world. So in all the design softwares, the AI is built in to do this. You click on 3 points or you line it up with a photo, and you can instantly in seconds put models on a digital articulator exactly how they are in the face. And it's very cool. So we data stack with photos. And if you get a CBCT data stack, now you're literally putting it in the patient's skull where it is in the real place, and you line the articulator up. And I would tell you that most people don't need that level of detail for it before it makes a difference, again, unless they're a statistical outlier. So if you have somebody that happens to be huge or really small, then it might make a difference. So these slides are from John Kois. I'm sorry, from John Cranham. He just talks about how we got to this point. And so this article from 2015 is the study that John Kois did. And what they found was they mounted all these, patients, and all the plane angles matched the patient. And they were within this, very small statistical range. And it was just incredible to see that it works, because at first it seems like it shouldn't work, but it really does. And it's that 100 millimeters. And so we have the studies to show. Here's the main thing. We don't see a difference. There's zero difference in accuracy when we mount using the digital Bonwell point, or using an ear bow, or using an actual physical Kois dental facial analyzer. So it works. That's the main thing to know. And it's so easy. It's frightening. So this is using 3Shape design software. And what you basically do, that plate represents the dental facial analyzer. So we're moving the plate to the incisal edge. And is that video playing, Angela? Good. And so you get it all set up, and he's just spinning it so you can see it. But essentially, the articulator is attached to that plate. So those models right now are exactly in space, lined up with the articulator, 100 millimeters from the hinge axis of the articulator, and that is now mounted. It's done. That's it. So maxillary cast using that magic Bonwell point. The mandibular cast, everybody says, what about the bottom? So the mandibular cast is mounted wherever you scanned it. So when you scan upper and lower scans in a patient's mouth and you scan their bite, if you scan them in MIP, then this will be an MIP. If you scan them in a centric relation or seated condylar position with the first point of contact, this will be mounted there. If you scan them with an open bite, if you're using an anterior deprogrammer, anterior jig, Lucia jig, then it's going to be an open bite. So the lower is where you scan it. The upper is positioned based on this deal. And in 2 seconds, it's mounted accurately, and no stone. You don't have to wait for stone to set. You don't have to pour stone. You don't have to trim models. It's like, yay. It's awesome. Totally awesome. So, like I said, the lower you're going to use, bite records. We do buccal bite scans in the digital world. You can do it in MIP. You can do it in CR, adapted centric posture, seated condylar position, first point of contact. You can do an open vertical. You can do a protrusive bite. If you're doing sleep appliances, you might use a George gauge and just scan it in that position. So we use a leaf gauge a lot. To try to establish a seated condylar position or centric relation position. And so we'll have the patients bite down on a few leaves. Depending on how tight they are, they might sit on that for a few minutes or whatever. And then we start having them slide forward and slide back, and we say squeeze. And then we take out some leaves, and we keep going until they feel their first point of contact. And if we're doing an open vertical, and we'll talk about that in a second, but we can scan it at that open vertical using a leaf gauge or a Lucia jig. Here you see a bite, a George gauge doing a protrusive bite for a sleep appliance, and that's how it's mounted. So it's just the way it was in the mouth, and then you can design your sleep appliance. If you're sending this to a lab for sleep appliance fabrication, you do this scan, this bite scan. So let's look at how we can use that to evaluate the centric stops in the digital world. So this is really cool. This to me is a game changer when we're looking at mounting models. Let's go back to the analog world for a minute, and I don't want this to become a whole occlusion lecture because we don't have time for that. But if we're trying to determine what's the patient's current bite situation, and we notice that they have a significant shift from their first point of contact in centric relation, and then they squeeze into MIP, and there's a pretty good slide. We see that slide happen, and we know that we're going to be doing some significant restorations. And so we want to decide where we're going to set the case up and how we're going to set the case. And do we need to do some equilibration? Are we going to be opening vertical? What are we doing? And so on the models, on articulators, we're all pretty familiar with doing that. If you're not familiar with doing that and you want to learn about that, come to the Pankey Institute. Shameless plug, because we'll teach you that. But in the digital world, it's even easier. So watch this video. And now we're going backwards again. So here we have those models mounted using that Bonwell point, and this scan, the bite scan, was taken with the patient in their centric relation arc of closure. So the condyle is seated, and we scan them with just the first point of contact hitting. So I'm going to go back and run that one more time, and what I want you to watch is they're biting at first point of contact. The pin is off the table. The front teeth are not touching. And watch what happens as they squeeze into MIP. Did you see the shift? Now, so we see the back teeth. What's actually happening back there, you're looking through the upper model. So you're looking through the upper model, and where you see the purple, that's the lower teeth. The cusps literally are embedding through the model. This is what you can't do in an analog world. So we're closing the articulator down until we see front teeth touch. So spin it open again. And this is a video, I apologize. It's not me doing this live. But so we see that the lower cusp tips are literally plunging through the model till we get to canines coupling or anterior teeth coupling, which we'll call that MIP. And now we say, okay, well, that was cool, but what can I do with that? So can I equilibrate that? Let's see. So we're going to go through that again. And what we're going to do, first of all, the other thing that's kind of cool, you can take the articulator picture off. It's just a picture. This is all math. And so the models are going to actually move just like they're in an articulator, but you don't need the physical thing in the way. So what he's showing here, he's literally plunging the teeth through each other just to show how that works. But now we're going to open back up to that point where just the anterior teeth are coupling. And now we use that slice tool and watch what happens. We're looking at the upper and the lower, and the purple is the upper and the black is the lower, and you see the cusp tips like plunging through, and he can measure how far, and we say, oh, that's 0.7 millimeters. So you can make a educated decision about, is this something I want to equilibrate, or am I going to destroy teeth to get things to hit together evenly? You know, if I'm going to equilibrate this, I got to take off. So here it would be almost 0.9. So it's almost a millimeter of tooth structure. Is that something I want to equilibrate or not? And you get to make that decision. And so within, that takes 30 seconds to do that. We can decide very quickly, is this an equilibration case, or is this a case I should be considering ortho? Or are we going to be restoring these teeth anyway and it doesn't matter, but I know I've got to start with reducing the height of those teeth to get the bite to come together evenly in harmony with where the jaw wants to be in centriculation. So just a total game changer for us to be able to click here and go, all right, that's 0.9 millimeters. Yeah, I'm probably not going to equilibrate that. That's a lot. That's a lot of grinding. Or you might be comfortable with that. I'm not going to tell you what to do. I'm just going to tell you that that's how we can check it. So it's really an amazing tool. In the old days, what we used to do is we Pindexed the models, and we would section the posterior segments and take them out, get the anterior guidance figured out, and then you put the lowers back in and they're way open, and you had to grind on the lower and upper posterior teeth to get everything to come together. That's how we learned how to equilibrate. But today with this tool, you can just push the teeth through each other and see that. So going from digital to analog, that's where the puzzle gets interesting, because at some point we are working on human patients. So if we could stay in the digital world all along, it'd be awesome. But at some point you got to go back to the patient, to the analog world, and either make something that's going to go in their mouth or do something in their mouth. So, it's an extremely important step doing analog models and equilibrating on models from a learning standpoint, and also from a standpoint of gaining confidence and knowledge about the patient. So what I just showed you in the digital world is amazing, and it's a time saver, but it's simply diagnostic. You can't learn how to equilibrate somebody on that. So we're still going back to the analog world and mounting models on an articulator and actually adjusting the models on the articulator, both from a learning curve standpoint and from confidence and knowledge. So How do we do that now is a little different. So we used to obviously use stone models and mount them. Then we've got printed digital models, but we still mounted them with a face bow or a facial analyzer, dental facial analyzer, and bite records and stone. But now we have this. This is the coolest thing ever. These are digital adapters. They're made by a company called Advanced Dental Design, AD2, or AD squared is their little moniker. And you can go online, and I'm not going to shift over. I was going to try to shift over, but every time I click on something, I screw it up. But if you go online and you look up Advanced Dental Design or AD2, you'll go to their webpage, and under Shop, look for digital adapters. And maybe Angela, you can put the website in the chat. And you buy these adapters. They are specific to your articulator. So if you have a Stratus, you got to get the one for Stratus. If you have a mid-mark, you get Mark, whatever that one is. A Mark 310. You get the Mark 310. If you have a Cavo, you get the Cavo. If you have whatever you have to get the right mount for your articulator. They're about $300. You only need one set. You only need one set of mounts. And then you print your models with this little extension that you see in the left that they snap onto, and the models just snap on and off. So everybody wants to know, how do I get that extension put onto my models to be able to use this mount? So I'm going to go through real quick and show you. So two things. One is in the design software, in exocad and in 3Shape, it's built in. So it's an option when you're printing your models and you're in your model design piece of the software. Like, do you want any kind of attachment or adapter or whatever? And it's sort of built into it. And you just pick, thanks again to John Coyce, you pick the Coyce digital mount. The files, if it's not in your software, in the AD2 Advanced Digital Design website, when you click on your articulator, there's a whole bunch of instructions and downloads for this software, and it's quite spelled out and pretty easy. What I did was I said, well, not everybody has the expensive design software exocad and 3Shape, but there's this program called Mesh Mixer, and Mesh Mixer is a free 3D design software. It is not specifically dental. So I say that to make sure everybody knows this is not a dental software. And what you do is you bring in the files that you download off of AD2. Of course, I made my own Pankey ones. And it brings them in with these little markers. And you simply take the models and you have to select both upper and lower, so you keep your occlusion. And you can take this and spin it 90 degrees, and you slide it into position, and you use these little flags that come with the download. And it tells you where the center or midline should be. And so we line that up with the midline, that purple vertical line. And you get it just right. And I'm kind of picky, probably isn't that critical, too far, come back, come back. There you go. And then we want to line it up to that incisal edge. That's the 100 mm mark. So that incisal edge thing is set right at 100 mm. So we bring that right up to that line, and you have just positioned your models onto this digital mount. Okay, zoom out. I tried doing this live. It's cumbersome, so I have these videos. And so it's now mounted to those to the file that is those digital mounts that have that extension that snap into those pieces. Now, the way I do it in Mesh Mixer, I've got to do some trimming, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but basically we're going to go in and we have to do what's called a plane cut to cut that excess off so that the models will sit flush on the digital adapter. And so you see now it's flush, the model and the thing is flush. And then you simply combine those into one file, and then you can print them. And you get this thing. And it's amazing. It's totally amazing. And like I said, all the instructions are on the website when you go to buy these mounts. And we use these all the time. I still print models on anything I'm equilibrating, and I test it out. I practice it. I've equilibrated hundreds of patients, but I still do this because I learn about the patient. I'm not surprised when I get to the mouth, and it is really at this point the only thing I'm printing models for, and putting on these digital mounts is trial equilibrations. Okay, so the next thing that comes up, well, if I'm equilibrating, I might need a bite splint, and I might need a bite splint anyway, or an occlusal splint because the patient's having, TMD muscle issues. We've got mobile teeth. We're trying to establish what is the correct, centric relation position. So I need a bite splint. I'm showing this with an upper. You can do this with a lower. I'm not here to talk about splint design, but basically I'll tell you my philosophy is I want even centric stops on relatively flat areas of the splint on as many teeth as possible with the condyle seated, and I want immediate posterior disclusion with an anterior guidance that is as shallow as possible that will accomplish that. Then just figure that out on every patient. Okay, so how do I design this splint in the mouth? So, this may be kind of where we want to end up, but in exocad, which is the software I use, excuse me, you have to fill out a prescription form, and there's a whole process of doing this prescription. It's the least intuitive thing I've ever seen. You click on a tooth, and then you tell it what you want to do, and then you click on the rest of the teeth and how we're getting the models used in digital impression scan. And we finally save it, and then we get to design it. It's really weird. But once we get into the design world, and let's slide into that, you're going to first pick a path of draw. So that's that green arrow. And we're going to set some parameters. We're going to trace our outline of our proposed occlusal splint, and it makes you this thing. What I have learned is when it comes in, it's really kind of wrinkly. And if you start manipulating this and adding to it to get your contacts or adjusting it, it adds wrinkly. And so I don't want wrinkly. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off smoothing what the AI gave me. By the way, I assume that very quickly the AI will do all of what I'm about to show you. And maybe there are some softwares that do that. But what I'm doing is I'm taking the smooth tool and I'm just smoothing this out. So can you see how much smoother that is now? It's not wrinkly. And I'm going to do the whole thing. I'm paying no attention to the bite. I'm just smoothing out what I got. And now I'm adding my centric stops. So I know where I want them on these cuss tips. And so I'm using the add tool, and I'm just filling in to create a nice flat landing area for those cuss tips. And I want to get all of those filled in. So I'm going to fast forward a little bit. So now we're starting to get more and more contacts. I still don't have anterior coupling, and I'd like to try to get that in a class 1 occlusion, which this is. So we're adding more and more, and we're getting it filled in. And you at some point can get to where we now have even centric stops in the back, maybe not quite even yet, but we'll get there. And we're still trying to create our anterior guidance and not too heavy in the front. And I'm going to keep playing with this. And it takes a little patience and a little time, and more you do it, the better you get at this. And again, you can design it any way you want. So I don't care what kind of splint you want to make. It's the same concept. And now I've got my splint pretty much how I want it. And now I want to put it on an articulator and see how's the function on it. So I'm going to fast forward. Well, I'll show you this first. So we're going to mount this on the articulator. We're not going to use a photo or a CBCT because this patient is a totally normal sized person and there's no need for it. I showed you the 3-shape one where you line it up to those little pads. You can do that here, but I also can click on 3 points. I can click on an incisal edge. So this is how I pretty much mount all my cases. Click on incisal edge, click on a cuss tip on the left side, and it's telling me what to do, by the way. So I'm going to pick which cuss tip is kind of in line with the occlusal plane, and I'll pick the same one on the other side. And then don't blink or you'll miss this. Ready? Oh, it's mounted. So like boom. Now notice that the models are not in contact. There is space between the upper and the lower. I think that, not just I think that, they've done studies, the most accurate position to mount your models, upper and lower models in, is in whatever position you're going to be treating. So if I'm making a splint, I'm actually scanning the occlusion with the amount of opening that I think my splint needs to be. So if I want it to be 2 millimeters in the posterior, I'm going to use a leaf gauge and open them 2 millimeters in the posterior, and that's where I scan this. So that's the most accurate versus having to open or close the articulator. You add some degree or risk of error. So now we have this mounted. Again, you can turn the picture of the articulator off. You have to do a couple of things to get it set up so it'll occlude on what you want it to. I'm just going to fast forward through that, but now you can see as we look through the function, we can see the protrusive, and we can go to lateral excursive movements here, and we can see how it's separating the posterior teeth, and it's guiding, and it's smooth. And we may play with that occlusion a little more until we get it just how we want it. Probably that's a little too high on the canines. I'd like to bring that down until we get a smooth crossover from canine to central. So we see here, like I've got all the room in the world to drop that front down some because how far it's how far it's separating, and we'll get a much smoother occlusion. And we end up with a final splint that we now can export and print on our printer and it's amazing. You get this splint that requires no reline because it fits so perfectly. The occlusion is very close to perfect. Like I'm almost sometimes having to find an excuse to whittle on it a little bit because I want to use that splint to help educate the patient about their occlusion. I want to talk about what they might feel in their own bite once they're wearing something that's really even on their teeth. They might start noticing things that are uneven on their teeth when they take that splint out. And so I'm whittling on it. I used to whittle on it because I had to, and now it doesn't need that much because it's there, I'll say this: those of you who are making acrylic splints that you're making in your own office, we reline most of them. I relined all of them because of distortion. Your impression material distorted, your stone distorted, the acrylic distorted, and so you had to make up for all that. There's no distortion with digital. The scan doesn't distort, the design doesn't distort, the splint doesn't distort very much. There's probably some in that post cure, but it doesn't seem to be an issue. And so it's been amazing. There's different materials. That's a question that usually comes up, so I'll cover it. I am using a product called Key Splint Soft. It is not a soft splint. It is a bad name. It's a hard shell splint. There is something called Key Splint Hard, which is too hard in my opinion. I find it very uncomfortable. It's harder than teeth, I think. So I don't think I want that. So the Key Splint Soft material, which is a hard material, that's what I'm using. Most of the printers are verified to be able to use that material. Some of them have their own proprietary splint materials. It's pretty much the same stuff. I've seen them all. I don't know the names of any of them. I can show you. Maybe. I've got a whole box of these things here. Wait a minute. So this is, can we see that?
Yes.
This is what the Key Splint Soft comes out like. It's a clear ish plastic material. You can hear it's hard and it just goes right in. It's awesome. I will tell you that one of the things you can get, if you have a lab that will do it, is you can get one made out of milled PMMA. Lots of us are doing milled PMMA overlays and provisionals made by the lab. It's a fabulous material, PMMA polymethyl methacrylate. It's basically jet or cold pack acrylic, but except it's out of a puck that's made in a factory that is super dense and super strong. But it's technically the same stuff. And then it's milled on a milling machine. And these are amazing. The problem is they tear up the mill and they can only mill two at a time. And it takes time to do it. So your lab doesn't want to do this because if it's milling two splints in a puck, that means that it's not milling 47 crowns out of a puck of zirconia. That is way more profitable to them. So for a while we were getting these and I love these, can't get them anymore from my lab. And I don't know anybody who's actually doing that. But if you can get a milled PMMA splint, you will love it. And it's got the same beautiful advantages of the key splint soft, but really everybody's going to printing now. It's the way we're doing everything. This is a picture of my sister in the gray shirt with my daughters on the outer edges and two of my nieces in the middle. And I just love this shirt because my sister's very much into mindfulness and all these things. I mean, my sister is. And so her shirt, live in the moment. I encourage you, live in the moment. Enjoy yourself and take it all in because you're going to blink and it just goes away. So let's keep moving. What about implants in the digital world? A lot of you are using digital tools in implant dentistry, whether you know it or not, because if you're working with a surgeon or if you're doing the surgery and you're getting a surgical guide, that's all being planned digitally. So, obviously, again, we got to have diagnostics. So this patient is missing number 8. They've got this bridge that they've had on for like 20 years that is from 7 to 9, and he is hoping to replace the bridge with an implant and restore 7 and 9. Love this situation for him. He's now old enough to do this. And so the first thing we're going to do is take off the existing bridge. Well, we're going to get a pre-op scan first, sorry. So we're going to get a pre-op scan, and from that scan, we're going to make some decisions about design. Do we want to live with the design we have? Do we want to improve the design? So you get to do that. This is their sort of problem list. Everything is pretty much within normal limits. No weird stuff to talk about. So first thing we do is we take off the old bridge, because what don't I know? I don't know what the condition of the underlying teeth are. So I've got to see what that is first. So we take off that old bridge, clean up anything that's underneath there, decay, stain, whatever, confirm that it's structurally sound. I think number 9 had endo, so we got to make sure that the post and core or whatever's in there is solid. And so you got to do the dentistry, right? So digital you don't ignore dentistry. But now we have this nice bridge on there that was just based on their pre-op models probably. And that also gives access for the surgeon to place the implant, right? So here's our provisional bridge that we put on, and we've confirmed the health of the teeth. And this is on with temporary cement so that the surgeon can take that on and off. We go to the lab. We send the lab the photos, the scans. This is that meshing of the photos with the models. We do some design work. Matt does some beautiful design work, some improvements we can make over the original design. And the patient gets to preview that. I get to preview that and approve that. Occlusion is always critical. These are my Bibles. Comprehensive Occlusal Concepts in Clinical Practice is my dad's book, and Dr. Dawson's book. I guess Dr. Dawson's book is the Old Testament, and my dad's is the New Testament or something like that. Anyway, which is kind of funny, but whatever. So we get CBCTs. We do some digital planning. You might use a company to do this. You might do this on your own with your surgeon. It's based on not where it's based on where the teeth go, right? So we've put the new teeth in this thing, and we are going to position the implant based on the restorative plan. And we want the screw to come out through the lingual, so we can use a screw retain restoration. And so that's all part of this idea of digital planning. So we have the implant in, we can get a surgical guide made, and now it's a pretty predictable situation. The implant has been placed. The implant has been, we had to do some connective tissue grafting in this case, so that it was actually two-stage surgery where they cover it up. Now we're uncovering the implant. The surgeon actually comes to my office and does the uncovering, and they do a little punch, and we put in a temporary abutment. This is a Straumann implant. We take our temporary abutment, and now we're going to convert to an implant provisional because we need to sculpt the tissue. So we make a screw retained provisional that has proper subgingival contouring to support our tissue. Remember, if you over contour it, it's going to throw the gingival margin apically. And if you under contour it, you can get that gingival margin to come down some. So we're going to play with that until we get it just how we want it. And here we have our implant provisional on number 8 and provisional restorations on 7 and 9. We start having a conversation about 10 around this time. What do you think about 10? Do we want to leave 10? Do we want to change 10? Our provisional is sculpting the tissue. We can see it's a little too low. We want to raise it up a little bit. So we're going to add some subgingival contour pressure and get that tissue to move. And we wait a few weeks, and boom, there it is. And we love it. And he's now saying, oh, well, 10 looks a little bit weird, so maybe, I don't know. We're still talking about 10. And maybe our midline's not quite canted properly. So we're looking at what do we want to change? What needs to be improved? And he's looking at it, we're looking at it, the lab's looking at it. So we go back to the lab and we do a new design based on the provisionals, what we didn't like, what we do like. We did end up adding 10. He decided he wanted a veneer 10 just to get a more symmetric look. He thought the look of 7 was better than 10, so that's what we did. And this is that new design. We're going to take that, make new provisionals. We're going to scan the provisionals. We're going to scan the preps, scan the implant with a scan body, and this goes to the lab. The lab can now marry the approved provisionals with the preps. Now, I will tell you this. So if you go back and forth between digital and analog, you increase your risk of error. So we're doing all of this digitally. None of this has been done on a model. The lab does then print die models and mounts them on the articulator simply to kind of double check everything. They're not making anything on these models. So I want to be really clear about that. So we're going to check contacts and we're going to check occlusion and function on here. If anything is way off or way weird, we assume something's not right in the printing, so we don't start grinding things off. But generally speaking, these drop in and they look great, and it's little rubber wheel adjustments. But so don't go back and forth. Don't scan and design and then go back to models and make something on models. That's where things get kind of screwed up. And we have our final design, which we think looks really good. Of course, he had to grow a beard, and why do patients do that? And here we see our final porcelain restorations. He did decide he wanted to go a little lighter. He's going to do some whitening later. I would have rather him whiten first, but he didn't. And but you notice the texture. I want to point out the texture. And these were, by the way, so these are all zirconia. Actually, no, this one was zirconia abutment with Emax crowns and veneers. I don't like to mix materials, especially in the anterior. So if I have a zirconia crown, I'm not going to also do lithium disilicate crowns on other teeth. I'm going to keep them all in the same material. But in this case, we did a zirconia abutment on a tie base with Emax lithium disilicate veneers. Not my norm, but pretty nice result. He was super happy with it. Functionally, it was great. Delivering these cases, I can't reiterate this enough. When you go from the analog world to the digital world, the amount of adjustments you're going to do in the mouth go to next to nothing. It's amazing how accurate this is. So everything we're adjusting in the mouth is going to be like rubber wheel adjustments to just lightly address a heavy contact or a heavy occlusal spot, but they're pretty much dialed in. It's amazing how accurate this stuff is. So you can see that detail in there. I'm going to zoom in, I think, a little more. Yeah, look at that anatomy. That's what makes teeth look real, right? And so people say the digital design stuff looks fake. This, you can design this in the software, but a lot of this is what the lab ceramist does after the restoration's been fabricated. So in their final detailing, they're putting all of these features in. And not everybody wants or needs this, but boy, does it make teeth look real instead of fake. When they're just perfectly smooth, they look so fake. So I love that. I think it's cool. So I'm going to end with this, and it's my best day in practice uh, so far. So far, you know, and we all have our best days. You know, your best day might be the day that everybody at the end of the day you gather in the conference room or something and we high five because we just knocked it out of the park and everybody's feeling great. And that's kind of what we want every day, right? Um, the best day might be the day you seated those amazing veneers on this really beautiful lady and just she was so happy and you were so happy and just everything came together perfectly. Yeah, it might be the day you made a ton of money. You know, that might be your best day. I don't know. It might be the day that you got those Masters tickets that you got to use to take your friend Kirk Barrett to the Masters from your patient who had access to that. It might be the day that you weren't in the office. You were at the Hinman Dental meeting and you took your team and you guys had a ball and you learned some stuff and you heard Kirk lecture and it was all great. Uh, but it might be the day that someone, you know, you changed someone's lives and it affected you emotionally. And those are pretty magic days as well. So let's look at this. This is a lovely situation where we use digital dentistry with intraoral scanning and digital design and modern 3D printing and created something that I don't think we could have as easily done in the analog world. Could probably still do it, but this was, I hate to say, easy. So this is a lovely young lady, 16-year-old. She came to us. She has ectodermal dysplasia. All of her teeth are weird. They have bad enamel. She is congenitally missing a ton of teeth. I'm going to show you the x-ray in a second. Um, her lower, she is missing all of her lower teeth, except for her second molars. On her upper, she is missing one, two, three. Well, you'll see here. Where's the x-ray? She is missing. So she's basically got her centrals and her one bicuspid and her molars, second molars. Actually, those are probably first molars. So horrible situation. And she's a 16-year-old and she's, you know, probably getting picked on in school. Who knows? She wants to be an actress. That's like her goal. Atlanta's becoming this like place where movies are made. And she wants to be an actress and she knows she can't with these teeth. And so she lives south of Atlanta and she got referred to me. The dentist she was seeing made her these lower mini implants, temporary implants, whatever you want to call them, and made her this lower denture that fits onto those and fits onto her molars. And she's totally fine with it. It works fine. It's got a good occlusal plane. It's fitting fine. And so she's not asking me to do anything with the lower. And I say, thank God, because I don't know what I would do. I thought this was a very eloquent solution for her lower. But her upper, the dentist was talking about doing a bunch of direct composites, which would totally work. It would take me a full day to do these and get them working properly and looking great. And she wanted something more. And oh, I should mention her primary laterals have what I call respiratory mobility. So when she breathes in, they move back, and when she breathes out, they move out. They're very mobile. They have hardly any root left, and so that's a concern and something she's got to have to deal with, or I'm going to have to deal with her. So we got to figure something out. So what do we do? Of course, we get all the photos. We're looking close at everything, and that's her lower denture. It actually sits over the posterior molar teeth that she has. So like they're like these little like metal coping or not metal like shells that fit over for her vertical stop in the back, and then she has those two mini implants that are holding the thing in the front. So we use digital dentistry, we do our scans, we get the photos, we put it together, we do the point alignment, multi-point alignment, and we do a design. And we take that design and we have these beautiful milled PMMA restorations made. Today you could print these with some of the highly filled uh, porcelain filled resins that we have to print with. And these are bonded right over her teeth. No prep. We did have to take the laterals out. You can see, so this was the day we took the laterals out. She came in, took the laterals out, and we bonded this thing in. And it's just bonded right over her existing teeth that she has. They understand and know that this is a very limited interim solution and that we're going to have to manage this over time. This is not a final solution, but at 16, in a very short appointment, she walks out with teeth and she loves her smile. She is so happy. And this was designed to fit with her lower denture, her existing denture. We did a little bit of adjustment of it to get it all to fit just right. And she has a good occlusion. This is functional. This is not just snap-on smile. These are made like final restorations. They're just made out of a milled PMMA material. And they are bonded onto her teeth. So she's not taking this thing on and off. And it's actually made in sections. So there was like 3 sections, front and both posteriors. So from a growth standpoint, she can still grow because she's a little girl. She's probably going to grow some more. And, as these fail, we can either make new ones or we can move her into more definitive restorations. Someday she'll be old enough for implants. And, it's just a great solution for her. But what happened next is the best part. She got a role as a recurring extra in the Vampire Diaries, which is filmed in downtown Atlanta. And I can't say that she got that because I made these teeth, but it probably didn't hurt. And she was just so appreciative. I will also tell you that I had never met the dad, but he came in on the day that we were putting the teeth in. So I hadn't met the dad through all the initial steps and everything. And he was just in tears. He just thank you so much, and gave my daughter a smile, and it was just one of those just truly emotional, um, you know, best days in practice. And I still say so far because I hope someday to have another great day in practice. And so with that, I want to thank you all for listening. Did I finish on time?
Yes.
2
Perfect
minutes over?
timing.
Thank you guys so much. This was great. It was so good to be back with ACT and BPA. And it's been a minute since I've been with everybody. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. I will stop sharing my screen and I will open the floor to questions if anybody wants to
Thank
say
you. That
anything
was
or
awesome.
communicate or argue or oh, good Lord. Are you serious? I'm looking who's on here now. Hi, Gary. Hi, Hugh.
Hi, Daren.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Good.
Well
Space.
done.
Thank you. Did I miss anything?
Not
In,
that I
in,
would have caught.
in an hour and a half?
That was
Yeah.
awesome.
And if you want to know anything else about the technical side of the dental side of what I talked about, come to the Pankey Institute. That's Gary's the director of Essentials curriculum there, and one of our faculty, and I'm one of the faculty. And concepts, one of the things I led with was without good sound principles, occlusal principles, aesthetic principles, principles, digital dentistry is just going to let you screw people up faster. So like you got to know how to do the dentistry first. And but the digital can really make it a lot more streamlined and I think easier and better.
So I did notice that Dr. Zade had a question though. What'd you bond on that PMMA with?
Oh, what did I buy? I don't remember, but I'm going to say it was probably probably what I did was I did a full etch. I applied adhesive, and then I used a probably either a it was something that was auto cured because I don't, I had some areas that were probably too thick to light cure through. I don't remember which dual cure resin cement I used, but I don't know. I don't remember what I was using. I'm sorry. Today I would probably use the Variolink Aesthetic dual cure. That's what I use today, but I don't remember what I was using.
Cool.
Thanks for putting me on the spot, though.
And you had another question too. Do you want to unmute or do you want me to read that one about the bite splint?
Great job, Daren. That's fantastic. And thank you, Gary.
Nice to see you,
Yeah.
Layla.
And if you want to learn
Good to
anything
see
about photogrammetry, ask this lady.
Oh, thank you.
I don't know anything about photogrammetry.
Thank you. Well, you
What's
did
your
a
question?
phenomenal job. I was curious about for your bite splints, and I know that depends whether you're milling your bite splint in PMMA or you're printing, but generally speaking, what do you like to set for your offset and how much undercut do you like to?
So it's a great question. Thank you for asking. So these are parameters in the software that you get to select. And what I would tell you is I kind of like to look at the teeth. So it's not one setting. If somebody has really sort of teeth, like bulbous teeth, you know what I mean? I might change my offset to a little bit more. So I think the standard is like 0.3. I don't know if it's 0.3 or 0.03 now that I'm saying it, but it's 3, whatever the 3 is. And I might increase that a little bit if I've got like really bulbous teeth or really crooked teeth. That's kind of like your digital dye spacer, I'll say it that way. And if you go too low, it'll be too tight. You won't get it to seat. But that, I apologize. I can't remember if it's 0.3 or 0.03. If anybody knows, tell me. But I know 3 is kind of the magic number I shoot for, and I might jack it up a little bit. And then the second thing I look at in undercuts is this a perio patient that has like massive undercuts that I want to make sure I'm really free of? I might only allow, 0.2 or 0.3 of a millimeter of undercut for engagement. But if I have somebody who's got perfectly straight teeth and they're like really cylindrical and there's almost no retention, and you look at the undercut on the screen and it's hardly there, I'll allow half a millimeter of undercut, like a lot, because I need it for retention, because otherwise it'll be loose, right? And I've had a few of those where I didn't get that right, and I print the splint, I go to put it in the mouth, and it is just loose. And I'm like, okay, I need to allow more undercut. And the other thing on some of those cases, I'm finding I'm doing a little bit more coverage onto the buccal. So my acrylic splints almost never had buccal flange because I would reline them and it would get like locked into the interproximal. With these, because I'm not relining them and I don't have any of that interproximal locking in, I sometimes have to have what I'll use a term from removable dentures is removable partial dentures is I need a reciprocating arm. So I'll have it come across the buccal a little bit more than usual to give me that retention. And I've had a few recently for whatever reason that I had to go back and redesign and reprint, but it's so easy it doesn't matter. By the way, how many splints can I make by hand at a time? 1. How many splints can I print at a time? Well, I design them one at a time on the software, but I load up the build platform as many as I can fit. I can print 10 or 12 splints at one time. And so I come back to the office from being at home overnight, and the printer was printing all night because that might take a couple hours. And there's 12 splints ready to go. And all I have to do is, trim off the supports and get it ready to go. And it's a very efficient workflow. So I love it. It's great. Thank you for asking.
Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Cool.
If anybody else has any questions, go ahead and unmute yourself or put them quickly into the chat. I also posted the CE link and code in the chat also, so be on the lookout for that. If you miss it, just email me, Angela at Act Dental, and I can help you. Yeah, that was awesome, Dr. Becker. I'm just amazed how far we've come and what's possible.
I'm reading through the chat real quick because I didn't look at it at all, and I just want to make sure that there aren't any. I'm the guy that's usually in the chat making all the offhanded comments, and no one really. That's really embarrassing. I was hoping people would have something to say. Anyway, thank you again so much for having me, and I really appreciate it. This was fun. Good to see everybody, and hope to do it again soon. You got my email if you wanted to email me anything if I can help in any way. And yeah,
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thanks,
thank you.
everybody.
All
Bye.
right.
Thanks, Daren.
Thank you.
Layla, see you in a
Bye.
while.
See you soon. You did awesome, Daren, as always.
Thank you.
That was fabulous.
I'm glad I didn't know that you guys were all on here because I would have been nervous.
Yeah, right. See ya.
All right. Bye.
Okay.